Hello everyone, welcome to a very special edition of Chris Before Coffee. So this is the first time that I've done a pre-recorded show. Yesterday I did an interview with Arthur and Anesu at the Bitcoin Squat. If you've been following me on Twitter, you'll know that I've been spending a week there with Amir Taki and Peter Todd, chief scientist of pretty much everything. And it's just a brief introduction to tell you that I'm having a great time. I'm getting a lot of material and I'm kind of rushing to get it all out. We haven't had great internet connectivity, so I've had to kind of run out to cafes and things. But I hope you enjoy this show. It does get kind of political at times, but I hope that you will try to look beyond the politics and look at some of the content. I've really been inspired by the level of entrepreneurialism that I've been seeing by the people in the squat, where they've just been taking surplus capital and matching it with unmet needs of the people out there. And it's really put into context some of the wastage that we're getting in the so-called tech startup community. Really, we're not seeing a whole lot of innovation. Now, there's a lot more for me to say. There's so much I try to cram into the script for this show. I wanted to talk about BBC Click coming in to interview us. I wanted to talk about some of the ethical issues that we've been discussing in the squad itself, some of the really hard issues, but I just wanted to spend the time on this video to focus on the people that the cameras weren't there to interview, the people that the BBC would never interview. And that was Arthur and Anesu, because I kind of felt like they were the real heroes of this story. I mean, sure, look, don't get me wrong, and I'm going to talk about it more. Amir is doing some great things with Dark Wallet. He's perhaps for the first time challenging us to think about some of the harder issues since Bitcoin itself. But that wouldn't exist if it weren't for the sacrifices made by the people that made the squat possible in the first place, that knew the law of the land going back all the way back to the Magna Carta here in the British Isles. And I just felt like these guys needed a voice, and that's what I hope to achieve with the World Crypto Network with your support. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the interview. Sure. Hi, my name is Chris from the World Crypto Network, and I'm joined here today by Anesu. Hi, how you doing, man? You well? Thank you for being on here. And of course, I'm joined by Arthur, who we saw the other day in our kind of impromptu crowdfunding campaign, just to get a few Bitcoins for these guys to help them out in the Bitcoin Squat, where we've been hanging out with Amir Taki, and we've also had the BBC here earlier today. So thank you very much for your donations. Thanks to you, I can now present some gizmos. There's a little headlamp for Arthur.
Thank you. It's well needed, and some tools as well.
There we go, and we got. So this is actually my old toolkit that I used to use in IT. So I don't even need. I don't need this anymore. I don't even know what half this stuff is. Right? Like, look at that. I don't know that you can use it, but I just went. My parents had it
for electrics,
and I was like, yeah. So that's yours. So keep those coming. Now tell us about this recent developments. We've had something called an IPO. Tell it, what is an IPO? Initial public offering? Are you launching your startup? Here it is.
Yeah, basically it's an interim possession order, which is it's actually for the High Courts in London for repossession of the building.
Okay.
We expected this at some point. Basically, it's about the highest type of possession order that you can get, which is enforceable within 24 hours of the court case once the owners prove their ownership of the building. We were hoping we weren't actually going to get IPO'd out of here, but they are obviously really feeling tight and want their property back in such a hurry. I always thought that it was necessary to have a reasonable cause or reasonable excuse to put in for one of these, which will be brought up in court. So that's.
Well, last night we were looking at the Richard Reeves Foundation to see what they were about. You'd done a little bit of research yourself, but I spent some time on Companies House, which in the UK is like a database of all of the companies and the directors and the chairman and all of that kind of thing. And it gives you their financials, gives you a summary of their financials, and it gives you a background on the directors, see what other companies they're involved with. And what we found was that, well, the youngest member of them of all was a 30-year-old, she's a Labour councillor. She's their senior researcher. I'm not going to start going through the names of the directors today, but what I did notice is that they, at the moment, are not taking applications for bursaries of students, which is their explicit aim of their charity. They're supposed to be a charity that helps get scholarships for young people that are in need of education. But their website says we're not taking sponsors. Now, I looked a bit further. They made donations to a foundation called the Shine Foundation, which helps kids with NEETs, people that are having difficulty learning. And they're basically platinum members of something called the Shine Foundation, the Shine organisation, which is like I think it's in North London somewhere, and they help young people get into education and training. Yeah. So they're not actually directly involved in charity work. It looks like they're giving out what they call grants to other people, but they have a net worth at the moment of £23 million. They've said that this property is kind of in a distressed situation because they haven't been able to sell it.
Yeah. So this is basically the trust or charity set up to hoard some assets, basically. They're obviously it got set up in
1706. Yeah.
1706. So it's been around a while. It was I don't know, like they're only fulfilling a minimum part of what they can do for a charity.
Minimum.
And as we saw yesterday, their value went up by 13% last year, which is interesting.
So this is a misallocation of capital. Maybe their intentions are good, maybe. Let's assume the best. I always try to assume the best in other people before I really get to know them, okay? So let's say they're a good organisation, maybe they're an old-fashioned organisation, they don't know about social media, they don't know about crowdfunding, they don't know about any of this stuff. So what they're doing is they're hoarding capital, like this London property, which is speculatively going up and up and up in price, which also means conversely that you guys can't afford to live like a sustainable lifestyle, right? Right? You're living on the edge of society, but then what they're doing is kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul.
What they're doing is, my thing is, this is 5 stories, 2 wings, central London. How many charities are they giving grants to who also are like, if I could just not pay rent, all this money could then be given to do what I actually said. And if they're saying they can't sell the space and they can't really use it, give it to people who convert it and give it to charities.
Well, we're already in contact with I wouldn't say charities, but people that are doing good. Whether it's feeding homeless people, going out like Anonymous Op Safe Winter, going out around London, handing out sleeping bags, clothing, food, all winter. This goes on. These people are desperate for space to be able to store the stuff and equipment that they use to be able to go and do their Good Samaritan work. I wouldn't call it charity because they're not earning anything out of it.
It's just being a decent human being
at
the end of the day.
Keep calling it charity.
So like here we have a massive space that's been empty for years. That's not being put to good use. Which like this charity that are very possessive over their property and would rather see it locked up, closed up,
and pay security 24 hours.
Yeah. Like when we leave here, like obviously they've spent like I think it's about £170 to file this paperwork. We have spoken to them on the phone to try and sort of negotiate an agreement, which I had quite a good conversation with the company secretary. But like they're obviously in a hurry to get this building back so they can lock it up and leave it empty again. Yeah, which is a big shame. Especially with the amount of interest and people that have been in and out of the building, and what good is going on here.
Well, now we've got Bitcoin, we've got direct peer-to-peer transactions. We don't need to set up these regulatory charity bodies. We don't need to be hiding all this stuff.
Yeah, but this is quite often. I've come across these charities before, and like whether they've been left in wills or some sort of legacy. As a trust to hold wealth together. This is all being sat inside the City of London as to hoard wealth, right? And to make sure that it doesn't get taken off them. Like a lot of the old families of England, they quite a lot of the upper classes are just trustafarians. They're living on trusts that just get handed down and handed down. It's not left in well, I suppose it is in a will, but it just sits there for the family. They don't pay all the tax that they should on it. Right.
So let's talk generally, because we don't have any evidence at the moment that this organisation is doing anything like that. But in general, there is a culture of setting up these charities as a way of evading tax, ostensibly by doing the minimal amount of work necessary to be a charity, like say, I don't know, giving a grant to another charity, just as an example, random example, that's nothing to do with this one. And then what you can do is you can see all the appreciation on capital, raise 23 million's worth of net income, and have that just sitting there whilst taking a salary. That's
pushed it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like just a
Yeah,
monthly payment coming in your bank for
everybody
nothing,
loved it,
everybody.
like, I don't really get like, because I think the work. My thing is like, I can deal with evil people being evil. That's the thing. Like that's just a difference of morals and like where you appreciate the value of like certain things. What I can't do is are hypocrites. You're telling me you're out there to do good, and your whole thing like, oh, I don't even take a salary from this charity. We just pay one person. I'm like, cool. You have a space that people are saying we also want to encourage the people who don't even get onto your radar because they're not accessible. But the net benefits of that is it would also help the people your charity is set up in the long term, man. It will also help the people your charities. Because how many kids, like 16 to 25, are living on the streets rough because they don't trust the people who are there to apparently help them. Like I've been in squats with like 14-year-olds and they're just like, I can't go to a shelter because they just send me to social services. I don't want to go back into foster care because all these things divert them back into, and they're just like, I've had some very bad experiences with foster care, and I'm just like, then you should stay here. It's a safe enough space, and like, if I move, you can move with me, but I don't.
This is actually a big problem in this country that the kids have actually got nowhere safe to go other than social services. Now, social services is not a good organisation. Kids are being stolen from families by social services, using quite harmful allegations, discrediting parents, to be able to steal the children, and then like quite often they end up being used by people like Jimmy Savile and people in these lovely companies like the BBC and our government, which is why I don't talk to BBC, by the way. I have no time for them, and until all of the wrong-uns and the manipulation from this pimp culture where they're giving our children to VIPs. I don't want to have anything to do with that. So I'm glad of you being here, Chris, because I'm quite happy to talk on like YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to be used by the state to propagate any bullshit, which is what they're good at. So I'd rather use private media and like not. I don't know. I feel like I'm selling my soul every time I talk to anyone from BBC.
They know exactly what they're doing. They're like, we have this thing that gets out, almost like by law, to the whole country, but we need validity because we're not actually engaging in the culture. We don't care. Like you're a passing fact. So what they do is they say, okay, here's a couple of lies. Here's a couple of lies. There's this story. We don't need to tell the truth, but we need a new group of people to trust us. So they co-opt you to give them validity as the new storytellers about it. And I'm like I have a lot of like, I don't know, political differences with some people. And I'm just like, my game plan is we should just stop giving them content whatsoever until they start telling stories in the correct manner, in the honest manner, not correct manner. I want you to tell me about, say what you want to say, but give me facts. Show me where your sources are that you can make these claims. Stop every time someone says, oh yeah, we've been through Israel and Gaza before, and you've been lying. And they're like, oh sorry, we forgot to tell you that like Israel does have Iron Dome, so what missiles can even get past? Israel, like, and then I'm just like, let's start talking about that sort of ecology where they need us, but we're also thinking we're using them, but we're not. We're being appropriated because they'll take you to a level where Click is the place you go to get information on Bitcoin. Right. And then they'll just be like, thank you, Tahi, fuck off. You say too much now. Here's a guy we can just tell.
Straight from the corporation.
Yeah, straight from the corporation, the new Bitcoin expert. And like, I'm not saying that everyone will follow when they get rid of you, but the people who do follow are people who otherwise would not have been led down this trap. And I'm like, that's the long game they play. That's the long game they've always played. just let's not give them validity and content. There are other people we could be telling these stories to. And yeah, it may not go to 60 million people. It may not be on like, but at least the people it's going to are bothered enough to get the real stories and the facts, not just they've tuned in at 11 p.m. and
Well, now we have the internet, so what do you make of all this stuff? Like the fact that we can have a YouTube channel now. We're not live on this show, but we often
I see it beyond YouTube, because even YouTube I have issues with. It's just, I think like, there's the will, there's the skill, there's the software, and like, I think everyone is kind of hungry to not be given a political line, just be given, I want to say what I want to say, and as long as you can fact check it, I can host it. Fuck libel, if you can fact check it, like Julian Assange thing about like everything should be hashed, so it gets. I don't care what you're saying, as long as you can show me that your argument isn't leading. There's a fact behind every point you make. If you're going to a conclusion, you can then reference that conclusion with something that's not like. I'm sick of this, like these people from like the Resolution Foundation, going off and making these big claims, but then just citing themselves. What is that?
That's not rigorous. That's not.
That's not like there is no level of like reality in the world you're painting. You just lied before, and now you're citing your own lie back to me. And I'm just like, okay, I'm done with all you guys. And I feel as if like YouTube is good, but Google is evil. Like Google is very evil. Like prison. Like Google is engaging in watching you in the highest level, in the most nefarious way as well. They're like, oh, we're gonna make it so easy and open and usable, but we'll use all your data to give the NSA information about you if they demand it, or we'll use all your data to stop the ease of access so someone can't come and make something better than us.
But in a way this is good, I believe, because it creates this struggle which then like the programmers like Amir then create dark wallet, which is a bit dark. I'd prefer like transparency, but like this struggle leads to new technology and new ways of avoiding all of this repression on the internet. So like they can't keep control of it because we'll just write a new program, make a new internet, control it, do it. Like
what do you like? What do you like? So you didn't like YouTube, but are there any alternatives?
No. I'm a hypocrite because I want to build an alternative, but it's just slowly from the base. You've got to find. There's this guy Alejandro Jorodowski, sick Mexican filmmaker. Anyone go watch El Topo and the Holy Mountain. It will change your life, really. But yeah, he talks about like. Well, actually, my grandma used to say like, there are people who can do a job. That's cool. There's a few select individuals who can do the job in the way that you want it to be done. So it's good to go and be like, I'm going to start a media company, there's someone who could design my website. But does their energy align with your energy? So you're not bothering each other, you can leave them to do a job. You can leave that person to do a job, knowing in full well that even if it's not exactly what you saw, it'll probably be better than what you saw because they understand where you're coming from fully. I'm searching for those warriors. And when I find them, like my mate Edwin, he's a guy who he wants to tell stories. He doesn't really care whether he doesn't want someone else telling him what stories to tell, essentially. Because that's the thing I find, and that's why I want to connect the squatters with creative people of a certain caliber who just said like, I could go work for these guys. Easy, like Edwin could probably go get a job at like a media company now. But he's like, I don't really want to do that because I know there'll be someone telling me what to take, what to say, someone telling me exactly how to edit. And then there's that slow erosion from your interest in telling stories to this is now a job that makes me money to you're now just a guy in a cog.
So let's talk about autonomy, right? Autonomy, self-direction, that's what I'm hearing a lot, right? You've opted out of the system. Yeah. I mean, can I ask you both a personal question? Could either of you go home? Like, is there anywhere for you to go if not the squat?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
I like anywhere in the world.
Have you got a safety net, I guess, as I'm asking?
Yeah, I guess so. I've still got family, friends back home. Yeah. I've got contacts in other countries, network in other countries. There's loads of places where I probably should be other than here right now, to be honest. but yeah, it's where we're at in the middle of Soho. So we're here at the moment. And yeah.
But how fly, to take the Icarus analogy, like the story was that Icarus shouldn't go too close to the sea because of the salt from the water and the moisture, and he shouldn't get too high to the sun. So at what point, where do you find that middle ground between breaking these laws? Because you said to me the other day, I think even on the video, that you want to do this lawfully, that you want to break
I'm into lawful rebellion. Like, to me, even if, like, last year, the last time I got arrested was for walking across a road at a fracking camp. Mm-hmm. Now, I was arrested for obstructing a vehicle on the highway. I laughed and went, yeah, that was me. Is that a crime, walking across a road? Like, yeah, obviously.
What was the context?
Well,
they were trying to...
Well, they were bringing in a lorry, and we were actually walking down the road in front of the lorry, but the cops decided that they were going to grab me out anyway. So I refused to sign anything in the police station, which meant that they couldn't let me go, which meant that they then took me to court, charged me 150 quid, and then wiped it out in time for sitting in a cell. So it's just a joke. Every time anyone gets arrested, they're feeding the system. This system has been made up to make us criminals. They make a lot of money out of making normal people criminals when the real criminals run the show. Now, if you can't even have a piss in London in the street without getting an £80 fine.
Hang on,
I know you don't really want
to... It's extraction, because what they're doing is, because all their friends are accruing money from the top, but we now live in a society that generally isn't as morally blind.
It's nothing to do with morals.
No,
it's about
it
revenue collection.
It is. Because you got to see what they're doing. They're saying, we're going to sell Royal Mail, but everybody likes the Royal Mail. We're going to break up the NHS. So how are we going to do this? We now need money from somewhere else because our mates are taking all the money that used to go to patients in the NHS. So that money is coming from your £80 parking fine from Westminster Council. That's how they're filling in these blank holes where they're stealing money.
But to play devil's advocate for a minute, you're not advocating pissing in the street, are you?
No.
But
this is the reality.
We should have more public toilets.
All this revenue collection that's happening from silly minor offences.
Yeah.
Growing cannabis, which is a herb or a flower. Yeah, it's illegal and being demonised in this country when it's one of the best medical cures for so many different ailments. They've banned it, criminalised it, demonised it because they want to push us pharmaceutical drugs. It's all in their plan to the corporate mind, isn't it? This squeezing of us all of the time to get revenue. This is what the police force now do. They're spending more time protecting private property and revenue collection. The courts, the barristers, the solicitors, the judges, they're all rinsing us, and it's not a free country, is it?
Well, let's talk action for a minute. So one of my plans is to try and crash the property market, at least in the UK anyway. And the way it's going down anyway. But
when the Duke of Westminster is selling huge chunks of his most, that's when you should start looking like, oh my god.
Well, it's probably why they can't sell this place, because this place, 40 Beak Street, was put up in 2009 for demolition, so they could be replaced with some luxury flats and offices.
Yep.
And it's prime real estate right here, and that's obviously fallen through because it's now 2014, hasn't gone through. Possibly because this market is top ticking, it's reaching its peak, and property developers are going, actually maybe I'll wait, maybe I'll just stymie this, maybe I'll just stonewall you for a bit, wait to see if I can get a better price. And as a result, you've got people on the street suffering. So my hypothesis was, well look, if you turn these assets into liabilities, if you raise the cost of sitting on empty property, they're not going to want to keep it, especially the foreign investors that aren't directly connected.
If you look at the people that sort of are hoarding this property, and who the corporations that it usually belongs to, and the people that are behind the scenes as trustees and this, that, and the other, they're the ones that are earning out of this. Because if they can cause a shortage of property lifts the rent price and the sale price. So we've got like, say 400,000 empty commercial properties. I'd love to know the number of how many residential are sat empty. But this creates, like, we're not short of homes, we're not short of housing, we're not short of space. We're short of the allocation of this space. They're hoarding it and keeping it locked up to make, like, there's people living homeless, quite a lot of people around this area. Why are they out on the street?
So
it's by manipulate, like, design.
Let me draw a line around this. So we've got surplus capital and we've got unmet needs. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to disintermediate, just getting in there and just linking those two directly, rather than going through the regular.
Well, we kind of have to do it. I know by, I'd say, is it force? Like, I don't know. It's called an occupation, isn't it? Which is like an invasion.
But who's really occupying? I mean, are they not occupying?
Really, I see this. It's everybody's. The land is everybody's. So we don't. Why do we need to? It's only these corporations and charities and stuff that have really, the land all belongs to the Queen. So, like, us having to rent it and fight over it is just a way of controlling us, like getting us in debt so we get a mortgage or pay rent to keep us nice and controllable. So the police officers still go to work even though they know their job is totally immoral, and like have to enforce rules that don't make sense, but they keep going in because they.
Some of these police officers themselves are victims of the system in the sense that. So,
like if you look at how much their training programs. You go in the army, you've got someone screaming in your face. It's all fear programming, like how to condition the mind into taking orders. The police go through it as well.
As soon as you have a system whereby you must be conditioned, and like you see I remember my friends like, I didn't go to uni, and they're like, oh yeah, you're an idiot for not going to uni. All of them came out of uni. My degree has no use in anything I wanted to do. I'm now 40 grand in debt. And I was like, have fun with those 4 years at a shitty, like, some shitty town where you had to pay rent. And they were like, oh, yeah, no, it wasn't helpful whatsoever. But then they were like, while they were there, they were really just like, oh, this is going to help me in so much. And I was like, because you're working 40 hours a week. You had to read. You didn't have time to just sit and think about the lunacy of what you were doing. You can go and rent a house in any uni town and live that life and be around those people. Why are you paying 9 grand a year to then have like 5 hours contact with someone who's pushing nonsense that you know is nonsense? Like, look at the pushback in university economics campuses where it's like, why are you still teaching us neoliberal economics? We just had the biggest market crash in the history of market crashes. Why are you perpetuating this bullshit? And then the guy turned around just like, oh, you didn't know? I'm ingrained in this whole thing. Like, I go give lectures at Goldman Sachs as much as I'm a lecturer at uni. Yeah, but you can't stop paying me 9 grand a year. And like, I was like, I see your game. I call bullshit, and I'm done with that. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of.
Yeah, I just want to. This is the last topic. Let's talk about the difference between you and the homeless community, because clearly you aren't homeless. Like you.
We've got roof overhead.
Roof overhead.
A doorway.
Yeah, you're eating. Yeah, you're good. So where do you draw that distinction? Because I think the general members of the public, right, that particularly ones that send us money, are ironically often themselves landowners, property developers, people that raise money, and they're sympathetic and they want to listen to our side of the story, but they don't like it when they hear all the extremism, the conspiracy theories. Like, what they want to know is, okay, so if you just go around, let's say they help us and they give us money, and we go around liberating these properties, right? How did they know that these aren't going to turn into crack dens, that this isn't just going to be chaos and it's not going to be...
Because, like, I say to them, like, I'm happy to... say you had almost like, if you're trying to raise money for a venture fund, you can say to someone, I'll give you the money immediately. But if there's not that level of trust and you don't have... You can put it in escrow. You can be like, okay, in 6 months, if these things are met, you can then have the property for another 6 months. I'm saying, like, I think all squatters would be happy to work on that level of like trust. Where
right.
Yeah, but what is a squatter?
No.
I don't actually like the terms of the squatter because it's it's been given a bit of a bad image by the press and the mainstream.
Reappropriate the words, man. I don't talk your language. I talk in a language where if you get what I'm saying and you know where it's coming from, I'd rather just use the words that are commonly in vernacular. Because once you start having this, not underspeak, but like special speak, you're then a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? I don't.
Pseudo-jargon.
It's good to say we want to be direct, but it's also very dangerous because we then ostracize people who aren't just in your speak all the time. You just gotta be like, squatters. This is what I mean by squatters.
Well, like if we the way we've been going about this since we've been here, and like getting in contact with the locals, it's a community collective,
right,
that are making good use of the local resources, which are
the
building
surplus capital, the unutilized capital, which you're then matching with those unmet needs in that community. But on a practical level, so you talked about the funding and the escrow and the accountability mechanisms, but physically, how do you make sure that this is a safe, inhabitable place where I can leave my things and I can, you know, come in and out and feel safe as a person?
Well,
you've done a good job here, but how do you do that?
You need to find the
by experience, basically. I've been squatting now for 2 years. Yeah, we've had some like mistakes because it's deemed as a free space. People are like, I can do this here. And you're like, no, you can't. You have to have some sort of, like, if you downstairs, there's actually a safer spaces policy. We don't particularly go by the safer spaces policy because it's a bit extreme.
What is it? Tell us.
No, just
like it's something that was made up through Occupy.
Right. Okay.
And like, you know, the basics are there, but to make sure that nobody's harmed, like it doesn't. It's a guideline. Like there's nothing you can do.
Like the laws that we regulate.
It's just a piece of paper.
Yeah. You know, we hope everyone treats each other with respect, and while they're in the building.
I also feel like I was saying to everyone like before, and I'm always about this. I'm like, if you're living with people and you trust those people, and then they say like, with Amir when he invites everyone from Bitcoin around, I'm like, I may not know this person, but someone I've chosen to live with and create this communal space has invited this person. So I'm just assuming that the people I'm living with have then like are of sane enough mind to be like, this is how the space operates, people. Like it's not like, and then everyone's once a friend tells you come to my space, it's a squat, but it's my home. It's other people's home. So be wary because we're not about like ashing on the floor or like even like little things like that. And once you explain that, I think people are more like, oh, actually, this is a very nice feeling. Oh, I'm happy to treat it as it should be treated. I feel as if that's gotten in a lot of people who are like I've been to loads of squats as well, and I think it's this idea of like, I have the space. That's enough of a fuck you to the landlord. I swear. Yeah. That's enough of like a fuck you to the landlord. Now I'm gonna trash the space. That's even more. And I'm like, no. What you actually do is you embarrass them and you say, here's what you're underusing a space for. I'm gonna bring in all these people who actually need a space. Set up something that everybody like nobody has a problem with. Work with the local community. Try and deal with some of the problems that exist with people who don't have space. And then I'll show everyone what can be done with the space. And then when I start telling people there's a problem with underused space in London, I can be like the thing we set up there. That's what can be done with spaces, and it didn't take any money. Everyone worked on a quid pro quo basis. You need space, I have a space, I don't have any tools.
Beautiful.
Let's link those people, make those connections, and then it stops being a space dependent thing. You've built a network of people who are there and ready and willing and
responsible.
Yeah.
This is another part of being responsible about what you're doing inside a building.
Yeah.
If it's just a mad squat, the door was open, people have just let themselves in and out, and no one's in control, no one's in charge. There's nothing going on there. It's just like you say, a crack house or whatever. Which doesn't happen that often because there's police around. You know, most of the time they're desperate to find a crime to create some more revenue for the government. So they, you know, if there was a crack house, I'm sure that you know, whatever's going on, this Soho, I'm sure there's brothels around it, whatever.
Should we just
like your door's
talk?
going to get bashed in, and the police are going to take away that.
Can you answer me this? Why don't the police break into one of these advertising agencies where doing coke is actually mandatory? It's in the job description. I worked in advertising. I didn't do any coke myself, which is why I didn't get on with a lot of people.
It goes on the company account.
But why don't they break into these? There's all this drug taking right now going on right around us. I haven't seen any drug taking here personally. I mean, I'm sure.
The police know. The police know. Like, they know their role. As much as you can have an honest discussion about policemen, about the differences, they know the role they serve, and they know the limits, and that's what I mean. It's that self-censorship that I'm in this position now. I know who I can go after, and I know who I can't go after. I also know that I must meet my quotas, and my quotas are easier to meet if I pick up a homeless guy on the streets, because he doesn't have a legal. It's the difference between, like, if I go off this advertising guy, he has a lawyer.
Right.
His lawyer will cost my force money. But if I go after this homeless guy, if I go after this 18-year-old kid who knows nothing, I'm hitting the quota.
It's an easy call.
Yeah. It's literally an easy thing you can do. And as much as they, like, I don't think they're ignorant to it, but I think it's just that self-censorship. They believe, like, there's more good to be done by locking up these people. And I'm just like, but do you start changing the moral outlook of people by taking the biggest people out? So do you then go to, like, do you do a Uruguay? Do you go after individual drug dealers, or do you just go, okay, you're all like we, the government, you know what I mean? We're gonna step in here and stop these guys, stop a whole income stream for these drug dealers. That's how we get drug dealers out of our country, and it's working. Portugal's decriminalised lots of drugs. Crime rates have gone down. HIV has gone down. The level of gang-related, like, violence has gone down, because you haven't made a system whereby there is lots of money to be made, but you have to be violent to make it. You've taken the violence out of the equation, and now it's like, if you want drugs and you're old enough and you have them in your possession, we're not going to turn you into a crime statistic.
Right.
You're a social statistic. Why do you need to take the drugs? If you're just taking drugs recreationally, continue. If you have underlying problems, there are all these clinics you can go to. If you have a heroin addiction, there's needle exchanges. And it's that creative way of sorting. Like Pete was talking about, do you deal with child pornography at the outcome, or do you deal with it, which is much cheaper, socially, by saying, these are the sort of environments within which a child decides, I'm going to sell my body, or you allow that power divide between what a child can think is allowed and what an adult can do? Or do you say, what's the problem here? The problem is there are too many children who don't feel safe enough, or who are not provided for by anything we do. When you take away green space, what are you doing? You're pushing children into dark corners of council estates to have fun. Who are they finding in dark corners but people you don't want children to hang around? So do we say, okay, now let's take over some of this brownfield site, build some community parks, work with people who do like open architecture, where, like, even the architecture allows the people to feel as if they have an ownership, like, not a communally owned area. And then you say, you go play their children. Like, we'll have people come around and help you. We'll make this community so self-efficient that it's not the government's job to watch your children. The children then become a byproduct of that society. Like, you make good families and good communities, and that protects children more than anything the social services can ever do.
But from what I see, civilization, culture, and the way it's put together is about dividing community and making easy targets. So they don't want to provide us community or good community. Like, it's about spoiling community, even the style of architecture, the way we're building our houses or our little boxes where we sit and get programmed by little boxes. Like, there's no real good community about it. So, and like, that makes it easier for people like, or groups like social services, and to make kind of.
I think the best time I ever spent at Occupy wasn't at St. Paul's, wasn't even really at Finsbury Square. It's when a group of 20 of us just went to Leighton, because they were building the basketball court on the marshes. And that was a thing where I actually cared about it because I spent my childhood on those marshes, loving it. The community were really just like, they're coming for our marshes. We never thought they would. And I was like, because this is how they work. When they have enough power, they stop caring about you. Yeah. And they're just like, my friend wants to develop the marshes. We're going to let them develop the marshes. And it was maybe the first time I've ever seen a grandma get under a lorry. And I was like, this is the easiest way to radicalize a community. You come in on a thing that they actually care about. You engage them on a level that's not, let me tell you about this superstructure that's coming for you. You're just like, you love the marshes. I love the marshes. What I'll do is, until you feel safe enough to get under a lorry, I'll get under a lorry. But they will come and arrest me. And the way you can help me is not when they come to arrest me, come to the police cell. It's when they come to arrest me, you get radicalized. You start using the tools and techniques that we've shown you to stop this thing. Because if all of you do that, they will not arrest all of you, but they'll arrest 20 activists because they don't care. And I was like, that's what I think activists need to start doing. Going into communities in Spain, that's all they do in Spain. They're just like, we're squatters, but they're taking your house. We'll take your house back. It's your house again now. Just go down the road. Just liberating houses. And then when people call out, when activists call out for a day of not paying for tube fares, a day of let's just walk through the streets to scare the living daylights out of the government, people come because they're like, these people are my people. These people helped me when I needed help the most. They weren't after like radicalizing me. They just came on a human level and said, what is your problem? I can show you the tools for you to fix your own problem. I'm not here to fix your problem for you because, to be honest, I don't have the time to fix everyone's problems, but I can I can bring people together who can teach you, if you want to, and if you feel like it's your only choice, how to fix your own problems. Because I feel like that's the way you build a movement of people that has the same ideals.
In Spain, they've had their struggle has been going on a lot longer, and it's
diggers, peasants' revolts. I'm saying like Britain forgets its revolutionary history in such a way, and we also play into their card of there is no political unrest. They tried to go to war on false premise, and everyone saw it. The biggest march on Parliament in the history of this country happened, and people are telling me Britain is not politically aware. It's when people go to these places and see, I see you're saying something, but let's take it back to the human level. Let's take it back to how me and you related and what can I do? Because you can tell a woman like, oh yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to go smash a bank, but she's like, I may not be ready for that yet. I may not be at that level of right, but what I can do is I can go to Fry and Barnet Library and I can be the library woman for free for you. And then like, Fry and Barnet, she meets some people, learn some skills, and then you're like, we don't need to come and open squats. We've taught everyone here that if they ever do this, this is how you do it. You've made a community more radical than it would have. You then go to another community. You go around, you get people to a level where they're just comfortable with this idea that it's possible. And then, because you know there will be and then, they will make the opening.
Next move.
They will make the opening. They will start arresting grandma and children. They will start shutting down schools. And then let's see them attack like an entire community that is saying, you're not shutting my school down.
Today I've spoken to the company secretary of the Richard Reeves Foundation. Basically, it was quite a quick conversation. She's like, you don't have any right to be there. We've got an offer or someone interested in buying the building. We're going through to the quickest route of getting you out of there as they can, really.
And
so
do we believe her when she says that they've got an offer coming in? Because this place was supposed to be demolished in 2009. And it's been 5 years since then. So
it's a good excuse to give them reason or reasonable cause for the interim possession order, which is a quick way of getting us out that's enforceable by police and bailiffs within 24 hours. They need reasonable excuse to try and pull this one. And on an empty building that's been sat for 10 years, like it's kind of
let's
hard.
just show everyone what this looks like. You saw this the other day in the video, but they deliberately strip everything out to try and make it uninhabitable. And people were saying to me downstairs, I don't know if this is true, can you confirm it, that the suspicion is that they're just deliberately letting it degrade so that they have a reason to demolish it so they can build these luxury apartments.
Well, we've seen the plans on the internet when we were doing a little bit of research, and like this is happening all over the country, probably all over the world, because if the speculator can't do anything automatically with it, he'll sometimes have to sit on it and wait until he can get planning permission changed, or he just makes a profit from the land value going up. So yeah, we're at the moment we've got this housing shortage and high rents and stuff when it's being caused by scarcity, which is showing up the system. It's actually a land of opportunity. There's empty space where people could employ themselves all over the place, yet we're being forced into this people living in doorways.
Economics often refers to this as rent scarcity. In other words, artificial scarcity. You're making this scarcity up, and you've got evidence right here that this is just sitting here. It's been sitting here for at least 2 or 3 years. We're actually sat in the offices of Brave New Talent, which is a startup here in London that has long since moved on. So, you know, these people just get a very sort of privileged that we're venture funding. They were here for a while, and then for reasons we're not sure about, they just moved out and it's been left ever since.
Yep, and that's the same story all over the place. So, you know, and then young businesses or new fresh businesses can't really afford to rent places. The shortage of property in the system is to push the prices up. So
you had a very good conversation with her last week, didn't you?
Yep.
And today it sounds to me like she's just totally
short. Yeah, they've had a chat about it in the office.
Right.
They're like the man that come to the door going, "I own this, get out now." He's like, he was quite ignorant to the fact that we have squatters' rights, and obviously in the conversation the secretary said, "Oh, through some quirk of the law." Yes. Well, these quirks of the law allow these charities to exist, and that's why they do exist quite a lot of the time, and this is through tax avoidance.
So they should be careful before throwing stones, because they themselves are guilty of the very thing.
Well, no, it's a quirk of the law. They're allowed to do what they do because it's, you know, it's lawful. We're allowed to do what we do. It's lawful. Just because they see it as we've stolen their property.
Let's talk about the downside to this, because if you don't have provisions in place to let someone discover some land and actually appropriate it and say, well, look, this isn't being used. I mean, Russia's gone into Ukraine recently and no one's telling them they're squatters. And Israel goes into Gaza and no one calls them squatters.
But it's an occupation. And like we get called occupiers, which is like basically an invasion. I don't feel that I'm invading anything. Like, this is an empty space being put to poor use.
Yeah.
There should be nothing to stop people making good use of empty spaces, and you know, it's creating all this empty space and people's selfish greed, profit motivated organisations locking.
Part of this sounds to me like it's a communications problem. Part of it's just like if they knew you and they got to know you and they knew how you come across and what you do in space, then they probably let you. And part of it's an attitude problem, a class division. Yeah. Like this guy's come around going, "Oh, I own this." It's all about control. You're a threat automatically. You're a threat in a scarcity-driven society.
Well, I'm a trespasser, aren't I?
Trespasser,
and,
right?
And like, yeah.
Yeah, but we were trespassers when we first came to these islands, right? Our ancestors trespassed. I mean, where do you draw that? Who really owns anything?
Well, this is we have no right to own it, do we?
But does anybody have the right to own it?
Not really.
Surely the rights belong to the people that can maintain it the best. And so far, you've done a better job than they have.
I see my right here as to be a guardian. Right. Whether it's inside a building or on this planet. Right. And part of being a guardian, you know, to cause no harm. And we're creating, well, our whole civilization is destructing the earth and everything about it. So we're not doing a very good job as guardians on the planet. And like I think the property ownership comes down to it quite a lot, because then it gives people, they go, I own this, I've got the right to say drill for oil or frack for gas, without no conscious thought about the environment and what they're doing. This is our environment. We need a good environment to be human properly. And if we ruin it, we won't be able to be human on this planet at all.
Yeah.
But they want us to be
it sounds to me like two different people have very different vision of what they want to do with this space. And we don't know too much about the Richard Reeves Foundation. We probably shouldn't be too harsh on them until we know a little bit more. But from what it looks like so far, in the short time that we have known them, is they don't look like they're doing what you would expect of a charity like Amnesty International, with grassroots activism going out, and you know that your donations, even though there are some inefficiencies, a lot of these charities, you know that it's going somewhere. It's not going to complete waste. Whereas with this charity, it looks to us like they're claiming that they give out grants. But then when you look at where the grants go, the people receiving them don't refer to them as grants, they just refer to them as like a donation. And it's like, well, anyone can donate. I could just set myself up as a charity. I could just go set up a charity right now.
It must be for tax relief or something like that.
That's right. I mean, that's what we're speculating. Otherwise, I mean, if we're going to be, let's be kind to them, let's be generous, and let's say, all right, look, they're just an old-fashioned company. They don't know about social media, they don't know about direct action, all that kind of thing. It's just not in that culture to them, okay? And maybe they're just falling on hard times like everyone. But their methodology, our criticism could be something like, yeah, but you're doing it wrong. Like, this is no way to speculating on in a market.
Their morals and ethics that they've been programmed or trained to through the culture. And it's a very, this is my land, everyone says it.
Right. But what I suppose what I'm saying is, like, there are better ways of like giving to charity. Like, as a kid on the receiving end of one of these grants, I don't want to feel like, you just propped up a housing boom so that I could get that grant money. I'd rather you got Arthur around here and he's helped me out directly, rather than all this inefficient.
It's better that the community come in. It's not about me. Like there's a group of us and a network of squatters all over. Well, it's countrywide basically. Quite a lot of them are conscious, community-minded people. Obviously, you get other people with other intentions and other
like you do anyway,
other needs.
Like you do in banking.
Like I've seen squats where like it's full of severely impoverished people that do end up having to strip the lead and the copper off the building to recycle, which they're actually doing a favour, because most of these buildings, like, if this building's going to be knocked down, what harm can we do here?
Yeah, exactly.
None. And we're causing, apart from...
why don't we, what's her name, the lady of this?
It's Shirley.
Shirley. Why don't we give her a call and like ask her to invite us to meet the buyer, and we can show them around ourselves. We know the building. I mean, why do you need an estate agent? You've got us. We know the building better than the estate agent.
Maybe worth a try. That's if there is a buyer.
This is what you like. If they're going to go in a court and use this, you've got to say, well, where's the evidence? Prove to me that you've got it, because we've reached out to you on social media and you haven't responded, right? Like, you don't even have a Twitter account. We had to go through one of your listed directors. And just say to them, okay, if you've got a buyer, let's show you. I mean, what do most estate agents do? They say, this is a room, this is another room, this can be knocked out. They don't say anything, they don't know anything about the properties they show. Like, they don't know.
They probably don't even need to look around the building, because they're just looking at what they've got on look at the postcode, look at the map, land registry. That's what the asset is, and that's all they see.
They don't care what it looks like.
They don't care what good it could be put to. They're thinking purely profit. This is ours to hold or to do what we like with it. They want to profit off it by knocking it down, putting something else fresh here, which is purely profit, isn't it? Yeah. That's most of when we're moving around London from building to building. That's all we generally find is like people with large land portfolios that have another agent in charge of looking after their investment. So you never really find out who they are because it's all limited companies and stuff. So it's been an eye opener for me to see how this land is being like
used or misused,
and how it's being stored up, and like who owns this land.
Yeah. Well, because everyone's obsessed with exchange value. They're interested in the price they can get on the market when a buyer and a seller exchange. What about the use value?
Yeah,
what about what you do with it in between that time?
Well, this is why things like squatters' rights were more or less in our constitution, because I believe they come from something called the Charter of the Forest, which is pre-Magna Carta, and like, you know, there's been these rights to make sure that people can house themselves. Like there's a long history of it through British English culture, and like they've stolen the right to squat a residential building. What we're actually witnessing right now is another massive land grab or a theft. The banks have put out toxic debt that they know that people will never be able to afford.
Yeah.
They've then jacked up the interest rates and scooped in the assets, and like then you get these like I'm gonna go back to the Richard Reevy Foundation again, but that's because that's been set up since the 1700s or something. This land then gets hidden away with companies like this, like Tesco's are doing a lot of land banking.
Yeah.
Why do they need to own?
In fact, that's their main
so much
source of revenue, is it not? Like they actually make more from the land banking than they do.
That's surprising, but they've scooped, and with companies like Tesco's, they've screwed down. Like I'm from a farming background.
That makes sense.
They've dictated the price to the farmers, screwed them down. Also with the EU legislation changes, that basically they've screwed farmers down until they've gone bust and then bought the land. So that they own the land, the factories and the processing plants and the shops. So like these corporations end up owning everything, and eventually, well, we're already owned by a big corporation, aren't we? Our birth certificate and everything makes you property of the Crown. And whenever you buy anything, you actually sign it over to them anyway. Like if you buy a car, the first thing you do is register it, where you're signing it back to DVLA. Same with a house, you register it, you're actually signing it back. You think you're taking ownership, but you register it back with them. It's a mad con.
All right, so what's the next step? Where do we go from here?
From here, we've already we're pretty on it, so we've already got a little list of buildings that are empty, places to go and look at. We've because of what we're doing at the moment, we really need electric and water and a reasonable space to be able to have visitors and host events for the next few weeks, really. So we were off last night. We found one really cool place that's been empty for years, but obviously it's been empty and it's been sealed up for years. So like I don't really know. I'm not even going to bother going inside the building because I don't think it would be that healthy to live in. Which is a shame because it's epic. So we'll be out later on, just having wandering around London, looking at a few more buildings to look at. Well,
I wish you all the best, and thanks so much for giving us the update.
You'll come and do some more with us, so maybe there'll be another update
in
another couple of days' time.
Lovely.
Cool.
Great.
Nice.
Cheers, mate.
Wicked.